Hello, everyone. I'm Graham Donovan from St. Paul United Methodist Church on Bardstown Road in the Highlands, one of your hosts for tonight. Welcome to the fifth presentation of Real Good News. We're going to take a few minutes to sign in the remaining people who have registered for the program. And while we're doing that, let's listen to our traditional song by John Gage, who has generously supported all our programs of Real Good News. I'll be back after John's song to introduce tonight's program. Let's listen to that now.
Sorry, can you start in here for me?
Sorry. This audio is not very loud. They're playing it off.
I live on a big blue ball. I never do dream I might fall. Even the day that I do, I'll jump off and smile back at you. I don't even know where we are. They tell us we're circling a star. Celestial creatures of light. We're children of love, shining bright. We walk where evening shadows wash the shore, with radiant sunsets pure as gold. Divine love shines in starlight evermore. Creation's power and beauty unfold. We're learning as children to let go, surrender to the sacred river's flow, looking within for what we know. Spirit will guide us as we grow. We're riding the big blue ball. We never do dream we might fall. Universal love surrounds us all, sustaining all creatures, great and small. Oh, la la la, la la la, la la la. We live on a big blue ball, and universal love surrounds us all.
Hello again. Thank you for that song. We've listened to it now 5 times, and it always sends a chill down my spine when I hear it again. Welcome to the 5th presentation of Real Good News from the 100% Renewable Energy Alliance of Louisville. otherwise known as REAL. We're very pleased to have you with us tonight, all of you. And I just wanted to remind ourselves that in February of last year, 2020, Louisville Metro government decided to revolutionize the way we power our city. And they resolved that by 2030, they would use only clean, renewable electricity in all Metro government operations. And by 2040, the entire Metro community would get all their energy needs 100% from clean, renewable energy sources. These are very bold ambitions, but they're absolutely necessary to address the urgent climate crisis we're facing across the globe. So tonight, we're going to focus on a few more details of this revolution in powering our city. We'll hear from Margaret Stewart and Sam Avery of 100% Real about progress with the city's goals and the road ahead. Then I'll give some comments, a few little comments on the latest 3-year plan of Louisville Gas and Electric, our local utility company. We're also very pleased to have as guest speakers tonight, Owen Zinnemann of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and Julie Donner of the Metro Office of Advanced Planning and Sustainability. And I wanted to take this opportunity at the beginning to thank Paul Westland, who is handling the technical aspects of our broadcast tonight and monitoring questions in the chat room. He may introduce those questions from time to time, and we want to give you plenty of chances to ask questions. We have actually quite a lot of space for questions tonight on our program. And you'll see a chat icon at the bottom of your screens in the middle. Please click on it at any time. Type in any questions you have. Please keep yourself muted unless we give you the go-ahead to ask the question directly. But please turn on your video if you're comfortable doing so the speakers can see you. It inspires them to know they're talking to real people at a real good news presentation. Now I'd like to give a special welcome to Elisa Owen, who recently assumed the position of Executive Director of Kentucky Interfaith Power and Light, which is a co-sponsor of this Real Good News broadcast. Elisa has worked on the economics of international electrical energy regulation and in sustainability initiatives in Louisville, and she's an ordained Presbyterian minister. Over to you, Elisa.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's good to see you all here. I am glad to be a co-sponsor of this event. I think it is vitally important, and it does me good to see all of your faces here and to know that there is a community in Louisville that is working toward where we need to go, which is 100% renewable energy. To that end, I want to just give you an update quickly. Kipple, along with many other organizations in Louisville, including the Louisville Climate Action Network and the Sierra Club. We have been working on a shareholder resolution. There is a group called the PPL Shareholder Resolution, and we have been working to get a shareholder resolution on the floor of the shareholder meeting this spring. Unfortunately, we are still looking for a shareholder, and I am not terribly hopeful that we're going to find one this year. We have a resolution ready to go, and if we were to take it, it would be an ask to LG&E and KU through the parent company PPL to please put their money where their mouth is. And that means that if they say they've got climate goals that they want to meet, they definitely need to not spend lobbying money working against things that make it easier to meet those climate goals. And so that's our resolution, and it is ready to go. Unfortunately, like I said, I don't know that we're going to find a shareholder this year, but I don't think we should despair because we've got some religious partners who are engaged in dialogue with PPL and who will take a shareholder resolution to the floor and file one if they don't get concessions from the company. So I will keep you abreast of that and let you know where our partners resolution goes and whether or not we actually find a shareholder. We do need a shareholder that holds at least $2,000 worth of stock. I just saw in the chat someone asked, and someone who has held that stock since for a year. So it would be from January the 4th of 2020. So if you or someone you know has that stock, we may be able to run and bring this and file this resolution. Keep in touch, and I'll keep in touch with you and let you know how our work with LG&E to try to encourage them to partner with us is going. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Elisa. Thank you. We very much appreciate the sponsorship of Kipple for our Real Good News broadcasts, and we appreciate your words, your latest words about the priorities you're working on. So, on to our next speaker. Margaret Stewart grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, and has lived most of her adult life here in Louisville, working for many years on environmental and peace issues in both Frankfurt and Washington, D.C. Just reminding you, she produced the colorful flyer we've been using for this series and also writes and reads poetry. And she's currently active with the 100% Renewable Energy Alliance of Louisville. Over to you, Margaret.
Thank you, Graham. And glad to see you all here with us. Thank you. Just some quick updates. I won't take long. Since our last real event that we had in September, we've continued to have speakers at the Metro Council meetings as much as we can. John Gage spoke at one of the meetings for us, the same one who is our musician. And Diana Clem also addressed the council meeting. Tomorrow night, there's another council meeting. Sam Avery and also Nick Christensen will be addressing that meeting tomorrow night. It is possible to have two, not just one, but two or maybe even three people speak on this topic of renewable energy at the same meeting. The talks are only 3 minutes long. Council meets twice a month, and anyone can sign up to address the council. You have to sign up in advance, though. I strongly urge you to consider doing this. We really want to keep encouraging and inspiring the council members who, as Graham just mentioned earlier, approved the resolution for 100% renewable energy, to make the goals of that resolution a reality. And so the more people they hear from, the more often, the better. Sam Avery can give you more information if you're interested in speaking, and I'll post his email in the chat box in just a minute here. Also, as far as what the city has done so far, you have met on one of our events, Zachary Tyler, who has been hired as the first ever city energy manager for Louisville. Louisville has contacted with NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, for guidance as we try to figure out the best way to make advances toward renewable energy. And you'll hear from Owen Zinnemann of NREL in a little while here on this program. Also, Louisville is just starting a Solar Over Louisville campaign. It's going to be great. You'll hear more about that also in this program. So that's wonderful. And the city is moving toward electrifying their transportation fleet. So all of this news, we just need to keep on getting more and more good news, and you can help us by giving one of the little 3-minute addresses to the Metro Council, and I'll post Sam's connect in the chat. And Graham, back to you.
Thank you, Margaret. All right. I'm pleased to welcome Sam Avery to give us an overview of our program for tonight in more detail. Sam, as you know, has a latest book, a 9th book, I think, maybe the 8th book, The Carbon Boycott, A Path to Freedom from Fossil Fuels. He's also a certified solar installer and a longtime social activist, and he lives on a small homestead outside Louisville. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Margaret and Elisa. Before we meet tonight's guest speakers, I thought I might run over some terms that you've probably heard that have to do with what they're going to say, what I'm going to say. And there are 4 of them I can think of right now. And they are the IRP, the PSC, the PPA, and the LG&E. Now, you might have heard of these before, particularly the last one. They like to stay in touch on a monthly basis. But now you may or may not have heard of the IRP. Graham is going to speak about that a little bit later on. The IRP is the Integrated Resource Plan. And what that's about is each utility has to present a plan of the resources it intends to integrate in order to produce dependable electricity in the city. Okay, we can't just have them out of energy. So they have to convince the government that they are actually going to be able to keep a steady supply of electricity. That's what the IRP is all about, the Integrated Resource Plan. But we looked into it. It's like over 100 pages long. But we found out through that our local utility, LG&E, plans or at least projects that it will still be generating 80% of its electricity with fossil fuel by 2036. That's not going to work. You may know, and I hope you know by now, that by 2040, the resolution says that the Louisville community has to be 100% carbon free. So we don't know how they plan, or if they actually plan, to go from 80% to 0% in 4 years. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. That's a big part of what we will be doing in the coming years. Okay, so that's the IRP and the LG&E. The government body that they have to submit this plan to is something called the Public Service Commission, or the PSC. Now, the Public Service Commission is already getting a lot of attention and will continue to in the coming years, because the Public Service Commission is there to regulate a natural monopoly. Now, electricity production is a national or a natural monopoly, at least in the distribution, because you can't have 4 or 5 different sets of wires coming into your house and go over market prices every time you plug in the toaster. You want just one utility company, and you want that to be reliable. And you don't want them to charge whatever they want to charge because they're a monopoly. So that's why we have a Public Service Commission, which is an arm of the government, which oversees that natural monopoly. But what you're going to see in the coming years is that renewable energy is what we call distributed. Solar, wind, hydro, thermal, wind, all of these different kinds of new energy sources coming in tend to be distributed all around where the grid is, rather than a central located power plant that's usually powered by coal or natural gas now. So what this means is that we've got to use those rooftops. There are thousands of barns and warehouses and parking lots that we could be putting solar panels on. But we can't have LG&E owning all of that. So we're going to have to do something else with the generation of electricity. Distribution of electricity through monopoly, through a regulated monopoly, fine. But generation of electricity is probably not going to make sense as a monopoly. So that's going to be a change that you'll see happening in the Public Service Commission. So to summarize, just to clarify, what we're talking about here is LG&E takes the IRP to the PSC. Okay, does that make sense? All right, that's what we're talking about here. That leaves out the PPA. That's one more I want to talk about. Now, PPA is a power purchase agreement. And what that means is you have a buyer of electricity, a large amount of electricity, and you have a seller of that electricity. It could be a utility company on either end of that deal, or it could be no utility company at all. The way it works is that the agreement is to supply a certain amount of electricity for a period of time at an agreed upon rate. And this produces a steady income for whoever is actually building the installation. So a solar company a solar developer may come along and say, okay, we can build this, large 500-acre, 1,000-acre solar installation for you, as long as you promise to pay us a certain amount of money for 20, 25 years for the electricity that it generates. That's how we're going to get renewable energy in Louisville, most likely. And I mention that now because LG&E is already doing this. You may have heard in the news a little while back that there is an installation, a solar installation going into McCracken County to supply solar energy to U of L, UK, and 3 corporations with this sort of power purchase agreement, the PPA. And this new installation they're talking about is 125 megawatts. Now, you don't have to know what that means, but you have to know that in order for Louisville to meet its first goal in the renewable energy resolution, it has to produce 100% of the electricity that's used for city operations. Now, being a former solar installer, I figured that that's going to be about 84 megawatts, smaller than the 125 megawatts they're already planning to do. So we could do this thing. We could, in the next coming years, we could get a similar PPA for the city of Louisville, where we could, in one way or another, figure out an arrangement where we can meet the first goal of our resolution way before 2030. So I hope our speakers tonight, they're going to be speaking on other topics, but maybe we can get a comment or two from them about that idea. So the next part of our program will be our 3 speakers, beginning with Graham Donovan, our own Graham Donovan.
Sam, thank you very much for that introduction and the overview you've given us. And thank you again on a personal note for being the driving force behind these real good news broadcasts. Now, for a few minutes, I'd like to make some comments about the recent integrated resource plan of our utility company, LG&E. Sam has already given a good introduction to that. Maybe he read my introduction and poached from it, I don't know. But anyway, you'll notice that LG&E is a private company, but it is different from almost all other private companies. All other private companies don't have to do this thing that they're doing. They don't have to report to the Public Service Commission. They don't have to write an integrated resource plan telling the Public Service Commission what they're going to do for the next 3 years and the next 15 years. But that's what LG&E and Kentucky Utilities, the other partner company that's part of the overall company, PPL, Pennsylvania Power and Light, which, by the way, is known as PPL Corporation, and it's headquartered in Allentown, Pennsylvania, as its name suggests. So LG&E has 800,000 customers in Louisville and the 16 surrounding counties around Louisville. And Kentucky Utilities has 560,000 customers in 77 Kentucky counties and 5 Virginia counties. And as I said, both LG&E and KU are owned by Pennsylvania Power and Light. So they have to, every 3 years, they have to report to the Public Service Commission to tell them what they're going to be using for generating electricity, what sort of resources, how they're going to assure a reasonable supply of electricity at reasonable cost, and what sort of assumptions they're making about the demand for electricity from government, from businesses, from organizations, from residences, and how they will meet those demands. And they'll also write about their problems they have, and if any, in supplying energy and what they'll do to solve those problems. because they need to assure the Public Service Commission and the public, they are answerable to the public, to provide reliable energy to all these customers 24 hours a day, every hour, every minute, every second, whenever consumers want it. And they must do that at reasonable cost. It is quite a complicated and heady task to do that. So they filed together, LG&E and KU, they filed together in one document. It's actually 280 pages long. I've been struggling with trying to read it, so I know it's more than 100 that Sam said. They last prepared an IRP in 2018, 3 years ago. They filed this new 2021 plan in October of this year, just a couple of months ago. And I'm just going to give you a few highlights of the plan and some questions we might like to ask about it. So this year, in 2021, the combined companies expect to generate 31,000 gigawatts of energy. And 78% of that is coming from coal, 21% from gas. Add those two together, you don't have much room out of 100 after that. 1.1% from hydro, a little hydro plant, and a very, 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 very tiny amount, 0.05% from solar. Okay, so in 2036, that's 15 years from now, they expect to generate almost 31,000 gigawatts of energy. First thing you'll notice about that, it's actually slightly less than the 31,337 they expect to produce this year. We'll come back to that in a second. Why is that? But the important thing to note about their plan for 2036, or their expectation for 2036, 15 years from now, is that 51% of that, more than 51% of that will still come from coal, 29%, a bit more than now, will come from gas, and 1.something% from hydro, and 18% from solar. So in other words, as Sam rightly said, almost 80% of their expectation for energy in 2036 will still be from fossil fuels. Now, why do they expect to produce less energy 15 years from now than they produce now? Well, of course, as population rises in this area, and as new businesses grow up in Kentucky, and there will be adoption of electric vehicles on quite a wide scale, all of these will lead to demand rising for electricity. So why are they expecting to produce less? The simple reason is they're expecting to get significantly increased efficiencies in use of energy over those 15 years. And they have good grounds for thinking this, because we have actually had a trend downwards in total electricity use in the state over the past few years, as the companies, generators, the two companies that we're talking about here, their generation facilities have increased efficiencies on the supply side, and the customers, above all, the consumers of electricity have had lots of efficiency increases through appliances in their homes by all sorts of insulation and various other things. So there's a slightly reduced expectation for energy needs in 15 years. So what the companies are going to do is they're going to retire some of their old coal plants. Unfortunately, not enough of them. They're going to add some new gas plants, and they're going to add some new solar arrays to get to that mix that I talked about a minute ago. So there's a problem right there for us, because as Sam rightly said, the Louisville Metro government has this goal of 100% of its electricity from renewable resources 9 years from now, and so on, the three goals we know about. And LG&E plans to have only 20% of its electricity produced from renewables in 2036, while Metro government wants 100% coming from renewables by 2035. There's slight dysfunction there. So the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan, is out of line with plans for Louisville Metro. It's also out of line, by the way, with pledges LG&E and KU have made through their parent company, PPL, to reduce emissions by 70 to 80% within this time framework. And it's also, of course, I don't need to say, out of line totally with the climate crisis that is quickly approaching us and the whole world. How to reduce carbon emissions quickly enough to hold off costly, damaging rises in average temperatures that will cause many deaths in the world and billions of dollars of damages. So LG&E's plan, just to summarize it, they will, by my calculation, they will produce 30 million tons of CO2 in the atmosphere in this year. And in 2035, 2036, they will still be producing 23 million tons of CO2 from this mix of fossil fuel plants and solar. That's only a 24% reduction compared with their pledge of 70 to 80% reduction. Here's another problem with the Integrated Resource Plan. For 10 years, LG&E and KU have been doing research at their E.W. Brown coal plant in Harrodsburg in Kentucky on carbon capture, which means taking carbon out of the smoke from a coal plant, putting it deep in the ground, store it forever, and prevent it going into the atmosphere. And in the IRP, the companies claim that they are, I'm quoting from the IRP, global leaders in carbon capture research. But even while Kentucky and Louisville and the world urgently need to reduce emissions of carbon, the IRP does not report any results of this carbon capture research, which has been going on for 10 years, more than 10 years, and they don't use any of its results to support reductions in carbon over the next 15 years. We don't really know why that is. We could speculate that the techniques have not proven successful or financially affordable, but maybe we'd be wrong in that. It would be useful to know. Okay, the next point. The forecasts that they use in the IRP of electric use from electric vehicles and the base load on the electrical grid that would come from electric vehicles. They assume in their base case scenario, 38,000 electric vehicles operating in Kentucky in 2036. But they also, in passing, mention a much higher forecast, which is, they call an accelerated version of Bloomberg New Energy Finance's forecast for electric vehicle adoption in Kentucky, which assumes that EVs, electric vehicles, will account for 50% of new vehicle sales by 2033. This predicts that by 2036, there will be 1.66 million cars in Kentucky, of which approximately 40% or 664,000 of them would be electric vehicles. You can see immediately there's a big difference between 664,000 and 38,000, which is the base case scenario they use. So what do they do with this base case scenario? They make a graph, they make a sort of a prediction of how owners of these 38,000 electric vehicles might want to naturally charge their vehicles at night. And so they look at the pattern of how they might like to do that. And they then impose on that graph a pattern of their own, which they call managed charging. And of course, it's different from the pattern of charging that would take place on the grid that would take place naturally, whatever naturally means. So they look at this and they want to see how much this is going to challenge their peak load during the nights when charging takes place. And they actually are quite confident that they can, with managed charging, which means putting out a series of incentives to consumers, to people who operate cars, electric cars, a series of incentives to them that will shift the pattern they would naturally want to do by charging their electric vehicles into a pattern that would be more managed by LG&E. They are confident that they can devise a system of incentives, although they don't really talk about what that would look like. Their analysis does sound plausible. It sounds that they might be able to manage charging in such a way that it would not challenge too much the base load that they've already got from all other sources. However, they do not analyze the high scenario that we talked about, the 664,000 electric vehicles. And if that is done using their methodology, it would peak EVs charging at a much higher level. But it still wouldn't challenge the base load, the base peak load out of all control. But it depends on the assumptions you make about charging patterns. And it's fairly easy if you go to this graph, as I did, and do an alternative sort of a simulation. What if the cars were all charged in 1 hour instead of 6 hours or something like that? You could quite quickly give rise to things that would challenge the grid. And the question is, why does it not do this analysis, the IRP? If it's doing this analysis behind the scenes and it's not disclosing it in the IRP, we don't know if that's happening. We don't really know if they're doing that. So it's a question at the moment we'd like to ask. The next thing is assumptions about the weather. And this is not quite as complex as the EV charge problem. When they forecast energy demand for the next 15 years, they assume in the IRP that the weather will be normal in every one of those next 15 years. And that normal is based on analysis of past years to make a sort of a mishmash of average or normal weather, just one sort of pattern of normal average weather. Well, we know that the weather is not going to be normal every one of those next 15 years. In fact, the oncoming climate crisis is leading to rising temperatures, increasing extreme heat, extreme storms, much more precipitation, floods, winds, tornadoes. So there are two problems here, really. Their forecasts of how much electricity will be demanded by consumers may turn out to be wrong because of weather. And the second problem is there may be increasing damages to generating facilities and power outages that will interrupt the energy supply and catch these companies unprepared for such emergencies. But we don't know what those look like because they're not really in the IRP. Another couple of points here. It's the management of electricity generation and distribution. It's really complicated to meet peak loads of electricity demand. They are different in summer and winter. They're different in daytime and night. They can change extremely quickly from hour to hour. And they give an example actually in the IRP of a case in January 6th of 2014 between 5 and 7 in the evening. It was during a polar vortex event. The companies had to meet demand that rose by 9% in the first hour and then fell 3% in the next hour, next half an hour, and then they went bouncing up and down for another half an hour. Those are quite big jumps in demand. So how are they planning to manage this? They have something called an advanced metering initiative, which they're going to invest a lot of money in advanced meters, smart metering. And that will help them with what they call demand side management in times of peak loads. So you'd hope, looking ahead 15 years, they would maybe decide to disclose something about what demand side management might look like and the advanced metering initiative might look like over those 15 years, but they decide not to do that. They just decide not to do that. It seems like a missed opportunity to me. Management of the grid. The grid is going to face major changes, investments, and challenges in the next decade. It has to, as Sam pointed out, it has to handle changes in the nature of electricity generation, going from a few concentrated power plants burning coal and gas to the distributed generation from solar panels on thousands of rooftops and many solar arrays. There'll be different peaks and valleys in generation, quite different resources to respond to those. And the IRP does mention these, but doesn't give any details of either analysis or intended investments to address the changes needed in the grid. And given what we expect from the climate crisis, it seems to me a very minimal thing to do to talk about the needed grid adjustments and investments. But this also seems to be in consonance with these companies' really low-key attention to switching to renewable energies as resources. I'm getting near the end now. The environmental impacts of electricity generation and distribution. As we all know, fossil fuels produce noxious chemicals that leave behind residues in the soil and water for decades. They're among the biggest producers of carbon emissions that are causing the climate crisis, as well as other noxious chemicals. All of these badly affect the health and welfare of humans, and we pay the costs of that in money and bad health. As long as fossil fuels are used, these costs will continue to rise, and the greater the cumulative damage they will be doing. The utilities don't appear to be in any hurry to improve these outcomes for their hundreds of thousands of customers. Instead, they're reducing carbon dioxide emissions by only 24% by 2036. And LG&E and KU in the IRP spend a lot of time talking about their relationship with the Environmental Protection Agency, because this is a major issue given these emissions that I've just mentioned. So they talk about a lot about the interactions they've had with the EPA through these programs. I'm just going to list them for you, and I'll give you a clue to what we're talking about. The Acid Deposition Control Program, the Clean Air Interstate Rule, the Hazardous Air Pollution Regulations, the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, Regional Haze, especially affecting Mammoth Cave National Park, greenhouse gases, of course, the Clean Water Act, and finally, coal combustion residuals. Some of those areas of concern, and particularly the greenhouse gas emissions, have repercussions beyond state boundaries. And with all these impacts, we would like to get clear answers and responses from our crucial utility companies about the problems we're facing, the climate crisis, and we'd like them to talk more clearly about the costs involved in meeting these regulations and altering their plants, in paying fines, in paying penalties, not to speak of the health problems that cost all of their customers a great deal of money and a great deal of health drawbacks. All of these regulations and all of the approaches of the companies to them cost a lot of money in lobbying, in lawyers and analysts, in paying fines and penalties and so on. We would like the Public Service Commission to identify these costs accurately and pressure LG&E to reduce them by switching to renewable resources. And finally, I just want to say, these two companies touch the lives of more people in Kentucky than any other corporate entity. They go into every single home that uses energy in this state. And we would like the integrated resource plan to convey a sense of community responsibility and participation and collaboration as members of this community, and we feel that this resource plan falls short of that kind of responsibility. All right. So that got a little bit longer than I intended.
Graham, could you briefly go over again Martha's question about the percentage breakdown for LG&E's energy portfolio in 2036?
This is their energy production in 2036. Let me just go back to those figures. 51.5% from coal, 29% from gas, 1.2% from hydro, and 18.3% from solar. Is that what you wanted, Martha?
Thank you. Yes, it is.
Okay. All right, without further ado, it's now my great pleasure to introduce to you Owen Zinnemann, who will speak to us about NREL's cooperation plan with the city of Louisville Metro. Over to you, Owen.
Great. I just want to confirm everyone can hear me and you can see my screen. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, thank you all so much. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. Yeah, I'm very happy to be here and to get to meet all of you and give you guys a little bit of a summary about what we're up to. So just to click through. So just for background, for those of you that don't know, Metro government has enrolled my institution, NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, to focus initially on supporting Metro government in achieving its 2030 goal. And that goal, just to refresh your memory, I think we've heard it a few times tonight, it's 100% renewable electricity for Metro government operations by 2030. So our focus has really been on the buildings that Metro government owns and operates, and thinking about how best to reduce the electricity usage in those buildings, and then also how to decarbonize the electricity supply for those buildings. And under phase one of our project, which was a smaller contract just to get things started, NREL worked with Metro government to identify just the various measures and approaches and angles that you know, the city has at its disposal to achieve this goal. And that's also based on like the legal and institutional context and constraints that the great state of Kentucky has to offer. Kentucky is a very unique place in terms of the way its electricity sector runs relative to other parts of the country. So the local conditions are really important and have definitely been accounted for as we've kind of gone through that whole process. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But just quickly, for those of you that don't know NREL, I just want to pause here and say this. So NREL, you know, we are an independent, objective, apolitical, technical institution. We are federally funded. Because of that, you know, we don't make policy recommendations for anyone. We don't advocate for specific policies or governmental actions in any ways. It's just not our role as a federal agency. We like to be an honest broker of information, but we're not in the ring the way that y'all are in terms of trying to address some of these really pressing issues. That being said, you know, what we do is we provide decision supportive advice and guidance and analysis so that Metro government and, you know, the broader community, all of you guys, can have the evidence base that you need to have informed discussions and make good decisions about your energy future. So that's our role, and I just think it's important to pause there for those of you that haven't worked with us before or know us. So we can get into it a bit. So I mentioned this earlier, you know, when we think about achieving this 2030 goal, there's really two sides of the equation to be pushing on. There's supply, which is where we get our electricity from, which we want to be 100% renewable in 9 years. And then there's demand, the electricity usage. And that reflects effectively how much renewable electricity we're going to have to go out and procure in order to meet that 2030 goal. So, a pretty broad experience base across the country suggests that, Louisville is going to need a portfolio approach here. You're going to need to put some downward pressure on the city's electricity usage, and you're going to have to decarbonize your supply. It's a both and situation, both to get this goal met. And I think that's just important context. So on the demand side of the equation, the electricity demand, the electricity usage. I don't want to get into the details here just because I don't think we have enough time. But I put all of these fancy looking measures in front of you, or complicated sounding measures in front of you, just to communicate a broader point, which is that we've identified a variety of different energy efficiency and conservation measures that that the city can pursue, as well as facility level renewable energy resources, things like rooftop solar, that y'all can consider pursuing for municipal buildings. I can tell you a bit more about what we're planning to do in phase 2 along these lines, but I'll leave it here for now. Now on the supply side, we can stick here for a second. So there's a lot to talk about. So we've actually done a decent bit in phase 1 of just regulatory and legal research to understand, just like at a high level, what are the options that Metro government has available to decarbonize the power supply. And these approaches can kind of be understood as sitting on a spectrum of like how involved or part of the solution LG&E KU is going to be versus how much Metro government may be going it alone. So it's like the level of utility involvement kind of goes from left to right. So on the left, in a situation where LG&E would be highly involved, we have this green tariff program, which this is essentially, this is the pathway that Sam had mentioned earlier about a PPA. And here, Metro government would essentially utilize this kind of voluntary renewable energy offering that that LG&E KU has. And there's pros and cons to this option. I can give you a preview in the next slide of kind of what we're thinking about for the next phase, because ultimately this is something that we're going to be studying in detail in phase 2. So NREL is going to be looking at this option, looking at all the nuts and bolts, all the details. Is this going to work? Is it going to have the intended effect? It's difficult for us to know how much it's going to cost because the one deal that is sort of out there in the works has not been approved by the PSC yet, I believe. Please someone speak up and correct me if that's wrong. But generally the prices have been redacted, so they're not public knowledge. So we are going to do everything we can to get as close as we can to providing as much decision supportive advice as we can, but we don't know the price. So the cost side of the equation is going to be a little bit tricky, but we'll figure out a way to get around that and navigate it. Anyway, I'm rambling about that. I was going to cover that in my next slide, but I'll just do it now. Okay, the next item is this idea of a virtual power purchase agreement, a VPPA. This is essentially a financial contract that the city would back to get a renewable energy project financed somewhere else in the region. But with the notable exception that the city would not physically receive the electricity that's being generated by the project. It would be getting generated elsewhere, but it still is, using the city's sort of backing and authority to get renewable energy deployed. So there's some pros there. And at the same time, LG&E would not be retiring any fossil assets to make up for this VPPA. So the emissions benefit is potentially a bit limited. So for this, what we did at NREL is we linked Metro government up with a cohort of cities across the nation who are studying this option in kind of like a facilitated peer learning environment. And we sort of just handed the baton off. That's kind of where we left it. And Julie, who's speaking next, can tell you a little bit more about that if that's of any interest. But that's another option that's being looked at right now beyond the green tariff. So next, in the middle, is utility regulatory advocacy, things like intervening in this LG&E KU IRP, or maybe exploring renegotiation of the county's franchise agreement with LG&E. And then there's also state policy advocacy activities, things, to be asking for at the State House in terms of changing rules to make things easier for, for the purposes or the objectives that Metro government has. So again, this is outside of what NREL as a federal agency is permitted to work on. My role has been to flag opportunities at a high level when I see them, make a few network connections that may be relevant, and then kind of quietly step back and step away. In the case of the IRP, for instance, I flagged the opportunity for the city. I made introductions to other interveners. I made introductions to other kind of experts in cities and NGOs who have experience intervening in IRPs. And that's all. I'm sort of backing off into the shadows now, because that's sort of the extent of what I'm able to do. And actually, on that note, if you all don't already know, and Allison Smith, who's on this call, can tell you guys more about this maybe during a discussion period. So it's my understanding that Metro government is having ongoing internal discussions about what an intervention in the LG&E KU IRP might look like for the Metro government. So they're talking about things like the issues that they would intervene over, like, which fights will they go after, which arguments will they make, how might they align with other partners, things like that. And my understanding is that it's progressing. I don't believe a final decision has been made by Metro government about whether or not they are going to intervene, but I am aware that there have been some discussions. So anyway, just wanted to give that update, and I'm sure Allison can share more about that. Finally, so there are various forms, when we're over on the right-hand side now here, there's various forms of what is called municipalization that can be considered. So this is a situation where Metro government starts its own utility, either by operating a parallel power grid to the LG&E grid, so just building on top of LG&E. Legally, that is something that is allowed to happen, as far as I'm able to assess. Or the alternative to that would be actually condemning and acquiring LG&E's power grid to start a city-run utility, basically. This is a much more direct way to take control of the city's electricity supply. It's also a pretty significant action to take for the community. It would require a referendum and then possibly a very long, protracted legal battle with LG&E. It is an option, and it's my job to flag options. So I'm just making all of you aware of that. That's on the supply side. I guess maybe notably absent from this list is this idea of like a city-owned solar farm. It would be possible to go through LG&E's green tariff program to get a PPA in place with a privately developed solar farm, but the city itself cannot develop a solar farm. Yeah, I guess maybe just to, I'll say it like this. At this time, based on everything I've been able to find, I can't identify a viable legal or regulatory pathway that would allow a city-owned solar farm to be connected to LG&E KU's grid, at least without changes to state law. I'm happy to talk more about that in the Q&A, but wanted to share that here. And obviously, I mentioned municipalization. If municipalization ever occurs, it's a very different ballgame in terms of whether or not something like that might be possible. And then my last slide here. What are we going to be doing in phase 2 of this partnership together? So first, as I mentioned, we're going to be studying this green tariff option top to bottom. There's a lot of questions, I think, remaining around cost, the specifics of how the tariff's going to be implemented. There are some practical challenges around metering. So the city has many different accounts with LG&E. Taken together, if you aggregate all those accounts together, it's enough to qualify for this program, which is only for large buyers. But on an individual basis, no individual account can actually qualify for this green tariff PPA offering. So that's something we're going to have a closer look at, potentially some discussions with LG&E about it. I think importantly, maybe one of the key outstanding questions that I'm hearing from Metro government, and on a personal note, I think this is the right question to be asking, is like, will use of this green tariff result in less coal or gas being burnt, right? So if the city enters into this PPA, will LG&E ramp down coal or gas up for that, or will they just turn around and sell it somewhere else? That's a question that I think is outstanding, that hopefully through some discussions with LG&E and others, we might be able to wrap our heads around to understand, like, is this actually an option that makes sense? So there's that. There's some of the outstanding questions on this green tariff, and we will be producing an issue brief that I would love to share with this whole community for feedback and guidance and things like that. The other thing that we're going to be doing, the other major activity is, because again, this is all focused on 2030, we are going to help guide some of Metro government's initial energy efficiency investments for the municipal building fleet via this new energy efficiency savings reinvestment mechanism that they've set up. If anyone doesn't know about that mechanism, I'm sure Allison or Julie would be happy to update you on that, but it's a fairly, in my estimation, a fairly significant development in terms of the city's ability to invest in energy efficiency. So what we're going to do is we're going to help the city prioritize energy efficiency investments in its municipal fleet. And then we're also going to help set long-term systems for collecting data and performing analysis, like the kind of stuff that we do at NREL. We're going to empower the city to start doing that on its own. So that over time, the city can just continue to, Metro government can just continue to run its own analyses and understand where is the biggest bang for its buck in terms of carbon reduction with its energy efficiency investments. So we're kind of thinking about how to serve the Metro government in the short term with just helping with the immediate pressing issue of where to place these dollars, and then also setting them up in the long term to be able to sort of do this continuously for quite a while. Last thing I'll say, we are planning to just continue to be available to Metro government for any number of different issues that come up. We have just a lot of informal conversations and ideation and things that go on to try to figure out how to move things forward to achieve these really ambitious goals. So we're going to just continue to be available and also be available to all of you for discussions, for advice, to share resources, you name it. Metro government is obviously supporting my time, but has also made it very clear to me that I should be a resource, not just to them, but to all of you. So hopefully this is a first conversation, and we should make sure to share my email and contact information after this so people can reach out. I'm always happy to chat. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Hope I haven't gone over time. I haven't really been keeping track. And yeah, looking forward to the discussion. And are we gonna hand it over to Julie next? Julie,
Yes,
if so, I'm happy to drive slides, if so.
Yes,
Okay.
could you stop the sharing of the slides so we can get the full screen up there? Paul, do you do that, or is Owen going to do that?
I'm happy to do it.
All right, yeah, Owen, if you want to just keep sharing,
here,
and
so.
yeah.
All right, let me just say thank you very much, Owen, for that very compelling and lucid presentation, and we thank you for joining us tonight to help us understand the options that we might be facing in the city over the next 10 years. You had some very interesting things in there, and I forgot to mention at the beginning that Owen has worked as an independent consultant all over the world in a lot of countries: South Africa, Mexico, India, Colombia, Thailand, and Vietnam. He's worked for the International Energy Agency, the International Renewable Energy Agency, USAID, and so on. And we feel privileged, Owen, that you agreed and offered to be a consultant going forward for the city and for us. Thank you for that. And we hope that we can use your knowledge and your experience as we go along. And now I'd like to introduce Julie Donna. Julie has worked for the Louisville Metro government since February of 2019, and she is the Sustainability Coordinator in the Office of Advanced Planning and Sustainability. And before that, she was leading projects for the City of Cincinnati Office of Environment and Sustainability. And she's going to talk about this exciting new program we have in the city, Solar over Louisville. Over to you, Julie. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Graham. Yeah, and thank you, Owen, for giving that overview of what we're doing in the next 10 years to be able to reach our 2030 goal. for Louisville Metro government's operations to have clean electricity. And so what I'm going to talk about today is what we're doing our 100% community-wide goal by 2040. So a little longer time horizon we have, but we have some tools and technologies that we can get implemented right now in our community. So Solar Over Louisville is our newest initiative to keep the ball rolling for community-wide renewable energy. Next slide. And just to acknowledge, this project is led up by Louisville Metro, but it's really been a very collaborative effort. We're working with the nonprofit Louisville Sustainability Council, who's helping us make sure that this program reaches our communities. We've also had many solar experts and even 100% real members who have really helped us out in the process of this development. So it's a really collaborative effort, and we're always looking for more partners to help out, get the word out, and other ways to help out this exciting new project. Next slide. So just to give a brief overview of the bigger picture here, you can go to the next slide. We have 2 climate plans for Louisville Metro, and these are both community-wide plans. And we have our climate action plan, which is the emissions reduction plan. And then we have Prepare Louisville, which is to create a climate resilient city. And I'm mentioning these both because, of course, installing solar energy across the city is going to be reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and preventing us from contributing to climate change. But as Graham mentioned in the IRP portion, we're going to be seeing more extreme weather, and having a more distributed energy grid across the city is actually going to be making us a more resilient city as well when it comes to climate change impacts. So there are multiple benefits to installing solar energy on homes and businesses across the city. And so this really checks off a lot of boxes. Next slide. And our emissions reduction plan does go over many strategies to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, not just solar energy on homes, even though it is calling for solar energies installations on our homes and businesses. It's calling for a cleaner energy grid from LG&E. And I would really recommend looking at our emissions reduction plan, and I put a link in the chat, because as we've talked about a lot today, we have a lot of obstacles and a lot of different ways that we can implement this. And some of them are local solutions. Some of them are local solutions that need significant amounts of funding. And some of them are statewide policy solutions. And in our emissions reduction plan, we've laid out what's our local solutions that need funding, and state solutions. So I'd really recommend checking that out. And so you get the different levers of power that we need to push toward to really make this happen and reduce our climate impacts here. Next slide. So, Solar Over Louisville campaign. Next slide. So this campaign is going to be helping homes and small businesses across the city go solar and put solar on your home. So of course, this is crucial to reaching our 100% clean energy goal, but it's also going to be creating local solar jobs, and it's going to be benefiting every resident who puts solar on your home, because you'll be getting that reduced energy bill. You'll be getting essentially free energy once that solar installation is paid for. So you'll be getting energy for 30 to 50 years to come. Next slide. So what is the Solar Over Louisville program? So it is a solarized program, which is a model that's used across the country to really accelerate local solar adoption in cities. And so our team is essentially going to be helping citizens across the greater Louisville Metro region solar. So we're going to be pre-screening your home so that we can give an idea of whether your home is suitable for solar and whether it's going to be the right option for you. And then we're also going to connect you with a vetted solar installer so that if it turns out that your home is going to be a great candidate for solar, we'll turn you over to the trusted installer, and you can get a good quality installation that is at a good price and meant to last. Next slide. So as I said, anyone within the Louisville Metro region is eligible, and that includes our entire metropolitan statistical area, including Indiana. So I know that Indiana has some net metering laws that are going to be changing pretty soon. So this is the perfect time for our Southern Indiana friends to go solar too. We're going to be focusing on home installations, but if you're a small business or house of worship, I encourage you to sign up too, and we can work with you and see whether that is a suitable property as well. Next slide. So the next steps, if you're interested in going solar or want to help to spread the word, you can complete our early access form and get started on that pre-screening process. Some additional things to look out for, because that really affects whether your home is suitable for solar, is to be looking at the age and type of your roof, whether you're in a historic or special use district. And then we'd recommend you gather your energy bills so that you can start to have an idea of how large of a solar installation you might need. And I put the link in the chat to that form, and it's also on our 100% Lou website. Next slide. So we have the request for proposals out as an open opportunity for any local or regional solar installation company to apply to. So we are going to be vetting our solar installers so that you can get a good affordable price from a quality solar installer that's going to be providing these local jobs, going to be having a history of great quality work in the Louisville region, and be providing you with some good hardware and materials. So if you know of any solar installation companies that might be interested, please send them my way, or you can send them that link that I also put in the chat for the RFP, which is on Louisville Metro's bonfire site. Next slide. So yes, lots of benefits, but this is really going to be both working and benefiting homeowners, but it's also going to be accelerating our Louisville market and helping to build up these local solar installation companies, and so building our market so that we are ready to go. Next slide. And I will quickly mention another program that really goes hand in hand with our Solar Over Louisville campaign. Next slide. And that is our Cool Roof Rebate Program. So we give $1 per square foot return for your cool roof installation if you have a residential or commercial property in Louisville. And we actually initiated this program to help manage urban heat, but it perfectly goes hand in hand with Solar Over Louisville, because you need a if you have an aging roof and need to replace it before you install your solar energy, then you can utilize this program as well. And actually the cool roof will make your solar panels more efficient. Next slide. And it'll also create energy efficiency in your home. So just so that you know, we have funds available for our West and South Louisville districts, which are our targeted high heat districts. So please install a cool roof. Install a cool roof if you live in these districts and apply for our funds. We have a very limited amount of funds available in our non-targeted districts as well. So I'd recommend you get on that. And even if the funds have been depleted by the time you apply for the program, we do have a wait list. So, so definitely apply today. Next slide. So as I've put in the chat, we have a new website for our clean energy programs, and it's really a hub for all of the information on all of these efforts that we've talked about today, whether it's our energy manager, Zach Tyler, and the energy that he's managing for Louisville Metro. We have our energy dashboard. We have the updates for NREL's work on our 2030 goal, the webpage for Solar Over Louisville and the 2040 goal, and more resources and additional information just about Louisville Metro's energy landscape and our continued efforts toward these goals. So I'd recommend going to 100%lou.com, checking out all the information there, and keep checking it so you can these updates. Next slide. And you can get updates on our Solar Over Louisville program, and as the campaign develops, such as when we make the official announcement about our chosen solar installer, if you go to our Facebook and our Twitter, and again, that 100%lou.com. You can also email solar@louisvillesustainabilitycouncil.org if you have any questions about the program, if you are interested in becoming an ambassador and helping to get the word out about the program in your neighborhood, or if you're just interested and want to learn more or contact us for any other reason, such as volunteering. Next slide. And just to put out there, that is my work email address and my phone number and our general Louisville Metro Sustainability website and social media accounts in case you're interested in following along with those too, because we have many, many other programs outside of our clean energy efforts, and we'd love for you to be involved with those as well. And I will stop there.
Thank you, Julie. And thank you, Owen and Graham also. I think we got a well-rounded discussion here. I had a couple of questions of Julie, or at least a comment that I'm very interested in this solar over Louisville. I was a retired solar installer. I wish it were around when I was busy doing it. It would have really helped spur the industry along. And it puts the people who want it with the people who can do it together. And that's pretty important right now. It's also important in another way, in that when we talk about these large utility scale installations, which are going, they're going to be going in all around the state pretty soon. They're big. They're a little bit too big. And one way we can keep the size of these installations down is to do more rooftops. There's a lot of tension between, some people say, oh, we got to do all rooftop. Other people say we got to do all utility scale. And we got to do both. And the one thing I wanted to ask Julie about is, now these installations you're talking about are net metering, as I understand it. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
they will be, LG&E actually just announced back in September their final rates for how they're compensating homeowners that install solar. And that's, I think, 6 points. I can look it up.
It's about 7 cents.
7 cents, 6.9 cents per kilowatt
Right.
hour.
But
So that is, now that, yeah, we had, one of the reasons we'd been, as we'd been developing this program, we had known that this net metering rate was up in the air. And so we were very excited to have that finally announced, even if it's, it's much significantly higher than LG&E had been requesting. So we were fairly happy with that, and really just happy to have some solid data to give our residents and who are interested, so that we can now make those solar installation calculations better about how much it's going to be paying back over the years. And solar in Indiana as well, they're ending their net metering, but if you get it installed by June 2022, then you will be grandfathered into their current net metering rate. So, so it's even more important and timely now for Southern Indiana residents to be installing solar.
Okay, my question is that net metering limits your production to what you're using on that site. So in other words, if you have a house with a really big roof on it and you use energy conservatively, you may be producing too much energy. And the way it works now is you don't get paid for that. There's no way that you can sell that. And that's a big weakness. If we're going to make rooftop energy part of an overall plan for the whole city to be producing its own energy, we've got to be using some big barns, some big buildings, some big warehouses, parking areas. There's all kinds of space available, but we have to make it so that investors or individuals can produce that energy and feed it into the grid and make it part of the overall picture. We should not be limiting rooftop solar to what that particular building uses. And I don't think that's part of the Solarized program, but I just wanted to say that if we're going to keep the size of utility scale solar down to a reasonable size, we've got to start using larger roofs, and we've got to start allowing people to sell that energy to the grid. That's called a feed-in tariff, and I'm hoping at some point we'll get that as part of the mix.
Sam, this is Allison. I just want to jump in and say that's an excellent point, and that falls on that spectrum. Owen was talking about things that we can do at the state level to advocate for. So that is something that we would want to talk to the state legislator about, making changes so that that would be possible, because you're 100% right. It doesn't make any sense for someone to produce more solar than they use at this point. But yes, that is a state issue that we will certainly be looking at taking up.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very
it
good.
definitely highlights the importance of our state policy changes and our and how we are building our buildings and how we are compensating our energy, and really just speaks to a lot of bigger issues to really that could really spur more solar development on our rooftops and in our buildings here in Louisville. But we are also getting started right now, doing what we can. So I'll also mention, you mentioned that, the more solar installations we have on our distributed grid would mean that we need less utility scale building out of our solar energy grid. And that also applies to energy efficiency and conservation. So just to mention that, as if our homes and our commercial buildings throughout Louisville are more energy efficient, also be less energy, and we won't need to build out as large of a utility scale renewable energy grid. So that's just also really crucial to everything we do, is reducing the demand side that Owen was talking about.
Right. Great. Okay. And Owen, I have a question for you. Now, LG&E is, I'm thankful for LG&E to this point. They provide reliable heat in the wintertime and light at nighttime, both of which most of us are using right now. So we should be thankful for that. I don't think, though, that we should ultimately depend on LG&E. We have to take a sort of independent stance here. I would like to work with them. They have the knowledge. They're nice people. But we should not be subject to them. We are not subjects of Louisville Gas and Electric. So what I would like to try to do is to, through their green tariff program, what is keeping us from coming up with some sort of sleeved PPA, public power purchase agreement, where LG&E can hire a solar developer to build the size installation we need for that first goal of the renewable energy resolution, and begin powering the city through the city operations through solar energy. I know there's a lot, this is a mixed question. It's a loaded question, but I want to know why we can't do that tomorrow.
Great. Yeah, there's a few things there. I'll see if I can respond to all of it. So basically, so there's a few things. First off, on the administrative front, I mentioned the metering issue earlier, where the city is many different meters, not one meter, not one account. So that there is a bit of there might be some discussion that needs to happen with LG&E, which would be a barrier to this happening tomorrow. Whereas, and then beyond that, we also do not know about cost. So we don't know if entering into one of these PPAs will double the electricity bill for the city, or if it'll save the city money. There's no information on it. So that's something that the Metro government would have to go into negotiation with them over it. But so again, that's why it couldn't happen tomorrow, but certainly it's something that is being investigated and is being taken fairly seriously by the Metro government, at least to the point that they've asked me to spend quite a bit of time looking at it. Another thing just to mention, I think, to this group generally is these 100% targets. I would make the observation that they are stated in a way that in certain respects they're up for interpretation. So 100% renewable by 2030 for municipal government electrical consumption operations. You could think of this as, you could interpret this in several different ways. You could say, well, the Metro government uses 1,000 units of energy per year. So as long as 1,000 units of solar are generated per year, then we can check the box and say we've done it. However, there are a lot of, another way you could look at it and say, Metro government in aggregate uses a lot of different energy throughout the day, right? Sometimes it's using a lot, sometimes it's using a little. And you might say, well, in order to meet this goal, you actually need 24/7 renewable electricity. So you need enough renewable electricity to meet demand of the city every hour of the day in order to comply with this goal. So these are just two different interpretations, and there's several others in there, but this green tariff will get you to the former. So it'll get to, on an annual basis, a solar farm will generate enough kilowatt hours to match your annual consumption. But on an emissions front, that may or may not be as impactful as saying you need 24/7 renewable power. So I'm not advocating for one or the other, but just making you aware of it. I think the last thing just to say about this green tariff, and I mentioned this earlier, but it might be worth repeating, is I think that Metro government has expressed some concern to me that they say, okay, well, if we do this green tariff, will there be a backing down of coal or gas generation? Will there be an emissions reduction if we do this? Or will LG&E turn around, use their transmission connection to MISO and elsewhere, and just sell that same coal power to someone else? So I think that's an open question. And I would say that Metro government has asked me to look at these things so that they can make an informed decision about if this might be a good idea or not. And there's nothing, we'll be sharing with everyone here, right? There's no secrets here. I think we just have to look at what we find. But I think there's some open questions that are perhaps standing in the way of just like an enthusiastic, let's do this tomorrow. Is that right, Allison and Julie? I don't want to speak for you too much.
I'll just add that the point about the accounts is that as the green tariff is written now, you have to be a large customer with a certain use on a single account. So legally, we do not technically qualify to do a green tariff. Now, we've been talking to LG&E about this for over a year, and there is a chance that they will be able to work around that. They can still get PSC approval, but that is all still up in the air. So that's why we haven't, hit the button and said, let's do it. We don't technically qualify, but that's one of those contingencies that Owen is going to help us work through.
Good, wonderful. I can see we're learning a lot as we go along, and I think by the time we get to that first goal, we'll know a lot more about how to get to the 2040. But Graham, you want to take it from here?
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you very much to all our speakers tonight. We really enjoyed your presentations and learned a lot. We've got a lot to digest, and there's been a lot of resources posted in the chat, a lot of them by Julie, and I would like to thank her very much for doing that. She's really good at doing that even while she's speaking, which is a miracle to me. So thank you to Owen, thank you to Julie, thank you to Margaret and Elisa and Sam and whoever else spoke. I can't remember who. Margaret, did I mention you? There are probably a few questions that didn't get answered in the chat. There was one small one that asked me whether I was referring to gigawatt hours of energy generated or gigawatt hours of capacity. I was certainly talking about energy generated, not capacity in those figures. So to clarify that. Have I missed any other questions? Paul, you had a question, but I think you got it answered by, maybe he saw your question and answered that. Is that satisfactory about the solar on rooftops?
Yes, I think so. I did want to make sure we mentioned that we have tentatively set a next meeting for early March.
Yes, I'm going to mention that. I just wanted to finish with the questions first.
Okay.
Any other questions anybody has before we wrap up? Okay, I would like to thank especially Rhodey Streeter, who put together a nice video to finish our program tonight of John Gage singing again. Unfortunately, John has been with us every program we've done so far in person and has finished with an in-person song. Tonight, we're going to have a recording of that because another engagement tonight because we're doing this program in the middle of the week. We're going to thank him for that. And let me just see here if there's anything else. Okay. Let's go to John Gage's final song. And I think this is all from us tonight. We'll hope to see you again in early March. We're planning another meeting in early March, another broadcast. And if I don't get the chance after John tonight, let me wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and good night. Paul, let's switch to John's video.
Over the past year, it's been a great honor and privilege to perform songs for this august gathering of heroes of mine, the defenders of our earth, people who are putting their
Why am I not hearing that?
We seem to have lost the sound, I think.
Yeah.
that will help us hopefully turn the tide on climate change.
Let me start over then.
Be great.
Over the past year, it's been a great honor and privilege to perform songs for this august gathering of heroes of mine, the defenders of our earth, people who are putting their lives on the line and their hopes on the line to make it a better place to be. So these songs all have meanings that are tied directly to renewable energy. And my hat is off to all the people who are doing so much work to make this a reality in Louisville, Kentucky. Solar power, wind power, hydropower, all those alternatives that will help us hopefully turn the tide on climate change. Thank you all. Give me the warm power of the sun, the steady flow of a waterfall, the spirit of living things as they return to clay. Give me the restless power of the wind, the comforting glow of a wood fire. Take all your fossil fuel poison power away. Everybody needs some power, I'm told, to shield them from the darkness and the cold. Some may seek a way to gain control when it's bought and sold. I know that lives are at stake, yours and mine and our descendants in time. So much to gain, so much to lose. Every one of us has to choose. Give me the warm power of the sun, the steady flow of the waterfall, the spirit of living things as they return to clay. Give me the restless power of the wind, the comforting glow of a wood fire. Take all your coal-fired power plants away. I know that lives are at stake, yours and mine and our descendants in time. So much to gain, so much to lose. Every one of us has to choose. Give me the warm power of the sun, the steady flow of a waterfall, the spirit of living things as they return to clay. Give me the restless power of the wind, the comforting glow of a wood fire. Take all your fossil fuel poison power away. Take all your fossil fuel poison power away.
Thank you, John. You're the best. Bye, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Take
Thank you,
care.
Graham.
you all.
Thank you, Graham, for hosting us.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.